By now, you've probably already heard about the blown dam in the Ukraine along the Dnieper River. Now, this is a major event, and if you've seen the videos, you understand kind of some of the aspects of what's going on here. Of course, you've probably heard about how the nuclear power plant, the Zaporizhzhia power plant, has a cooling pond that's going to be slowly drained over the next number of days, and that could cause the plant to have trouble cooling itself. And so this is a major incident that way. It is one of the few bridges across the Dnieper River in that area. And of course, we got both sides of this claiming the other did this. Ukrainian President Zelensky is claiming that the Russians sabotaged the dam, and the Russians are claiming that an artillery strike by the Ukrainians caused this damage to the dam. We're going to get into that, the whodunit. We're going to get into the issues that's surrounding that, what the impact really is going to be here. The initial reports were kind of muddled, and so forgive the delay here. I wanted to wait for a little more information to get out to know exactly maybe kind of what happened and what facilities were actually impacted and how that might impact you and I. We're going to get into all of that and more. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and so we try to get into the real information behind the stories and not jump the gun and potentially put out false information or information that has been, is just coming out without enough information behind it. So if you like that type of reporting, please do give a thumbs up and help us get out to more people. If you haven't already subscribed, please poke that subscribe button so that you can keep getting more information. And we want to thank our sponsor for the video, Genesis Gold Group. If you have retirement funds that you want to get out of stocks and bonds into something more secure, you can talk to Jonathan and his team at Genesis Gold Group. You can find them down in the description down below, or you can type it into Google. Let them know that you came from this channel, and they are actually going to waive the setup fees. So we've already heard, we heard from Ukraine relatively early. They immediately claimed it was sabotaged by the Russians, and as we look at kind of both sides of the story, if you don't want to hear both sides of the story, and if you just want to hear one side of the story, well then go ahead and, this is probably not the video for you. But this is another Rorschach test, right? The blobs on the paper where you look at it and like you project kind of what you're already thinking onto it. So if you already know, like once you saw something bad happen in Ukraine, if you already know who did it, well then you don't need to have evidence. You don't need to hear, the stuff behind it. And a lot of people are at that point now where anything bad that happens in that country is of a certain party. And there's Americans are on both sides of this. There's people on both sides of this, and they don't want to hear any information whatsoever. And that's, that is what it is. But first off is that Ukraine came out of the gate very quickly and said that this was Russian sabotage. Now, it is important to note that this dam was actually being held by Russian forces, and so it was under the control. President Zelensky is not claiming that artillery was used on the dam, but rather that apparently makes it sound like it was sabotaged with explosives controlled in a controlled manner of that or something along those lines. But both sides are claiming that there was an explosion. And that's important because it kind of rules out another thing that we're going to be looking at here shortly. So they came out with that very quickly. The response from Russia has been relatively slow and kind of piecemeal. But the Ukrainian officials, Ukrainian military seem to be in lockstep and right out of the gate telling us exactly what happened. And at first, you may think that makes it sound like, well, then the Ukrainians must be telling the truth. But actually, when you have a false flag kind of thing, one of the most important things is to have your messaging very clear, concise, everybody briefed in on exactly the story so they can all start parroting and repeating that story. Whereas if the attack happens to you, you're kind of like, what happened? You don't know what happened, and you're trying to figure out what happened, and there's people trying to report in, and they're reporting to different officials, and different officials are chiming in and giving their opinions. And so usually the side that is is in more of a state of confusion is actually, turns out, usually the innocent party in the matter, whereas the side that has all the answers and has everybody going out in front of the media and immediately talking about it, it's like one of the things you learn in crime solving, right? When there's a murder or something like that, oftentimes the lead suspect is the person that called 911 first. Oftentimes the person that committed the crime is there to report the crime, or is one of the first people on scene, and then they pretend like they just kind of showed up, and that's often the case. But anyway, there were reports that in the wintertime, I have not been able to confirm these, but apparently the Russians sabotaged the gates when they took control of the dam. There's reports that they sabotaged the gates this winter, and potentially, if they did, and word was that the water level was like rising up because it couldn't be released fast enough. That was a concern of mine initially, was that maybe the damage to those sluice gates caused the water to top over, and then it actually it breached, not because of an explosion, but because of just the damage that had been done to the dam already. But both sides are claiming that there was actual explosion, that there was some sort of event that caused this. So initial satellite reports, there is a picture out there by a satellite that shows a very early stage of the breach, and it's relatively small. And then the pictures and video that you're getting now of the much larger breach, it started small, and then of course, like a dam, it just collapsed, and now it's much larger. So initial pictures and videos that you're seeing out there, don't assume that this was like a massive, like they took out the whole section of the dam. It looks like it was like maybe one gate or damage to one specific area of the dam is actually what spread. All right. They're also claiming the rationale behind the Russians attacking their own dam was that so that they can just pin this on the Ukrainians or something. So. Now, when we flip sides over to the Russian side, what the Russian official, that kind of the installed mayor of that area, of the seized territory, he said that the Ukrainians used artillery to attack the dam. Now, one thing I need to point out here is that twice last year, Ukrainians discussed attacking and either sabotaging this dam or destroying this dam in order to cause flooding. And the most recent, the most high-profile, General Kovalchuk stated, and this was in a Washington Post article. So this isn't like some random thing, but a Washington Post article discussed that not only did General Kovalchuk actually look into and actually plan out an attack on the dam, but they actually tested 3 HIMARS strikes on the dam itself to see if they could damage some of the gates. So was the damage to the gates done by the Russians, or was this part of the HIMARS strikes that were done while the Ukrainians were still in control of the dam back last year? I don't know. It's hard to get information on that type of thing. But what we do know is that the Ukrainians said that they would only use that as a matter of last resort, attacking the dam. And let's look at some of the effects of this loss of this dam. The first thing, as I mentioned already, that this dam is one of the only bridges in that whole section of the Dnieper River. And so while Russian forces are on the west bank, so they have to cross over the dam in order to resupply their troops on the other side. There are troops cut off now, Russian troops cut off, which it would seem like that would be a very, very bad strategic and tactical thing to do to cut off your own troops from resupply. They're basically now on a beachhead on the other bank of the river without being able to get ammo, fuel, all that kind of stuff trucked across the dam. That's now impossible to do. And with the water being moving much faster and uncontrolled, they don't seem to have a lot of boats in the area set up for resupply. So that kind of makes it seem like this is definitely an advantage for the Ukrainians here, that the Russians are cut off now. The second thing is that this dam feeds water into Crimea. So the water system in Crimea is actually fed by this dam. And so with the dam destroyed, the canal of water going to Crimea is now not flowing anymore, unless they can get do something to kind of, they could probably put pumps into the water and like pump it in. Also, this dam provides power, a lot of power. It's a hydroelectric plant as well. It provides a lot of power for Russian-controlled areas. It doesn't provide power to the Ukrainians, so that's also a loss for the Russians, losing power to the area. And in addition to that, this is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that's upstream, that the reservoir there kind of feeds into the cooling ponds of the nuclear power plant. That's going to drop, and the Russians are still in control of the nuclear power plant there. So it's going to make their situation of the control of the power plant much more difficult. They lose the access to their troops on the west bank of the river. It just, all around, it's kind of like, it's hard to see the upside for the Russians, and the whole world, of course, understandably so. I mean, we could all tell you exactly that was going to happen. Once the Ukrainians came out and said the Russians sabotaged this, everyone in the West, everyone's coming out immediately and going, well, those bad Russians. And so for the Ukrainians to say that this is a false flag that's supposed to make the Ukrainians look bad, it's like, but it doesn't make, like, nobody's actually, everyone's eating up the story of the Ukrainians, so why in the world would Russia ever think that suddenly everyone's going to be like, oh, well, the Ukrainians did this? And yeah, okay, so a few people on the internets that are not part of the mainstream media like me are going to actually look at both sides and go, you know, that story just doesn't add up. One, your story seems a little too canned and immediate. You already know what happens when you don't even have control of the dam. So how did the Ukrainians know this is sabotage? Like, how did they know that? Like, did they have cameras that were like on the dam kind of watching it and everything like that? How did they come up with the story so quickly? How did they come out with it? Why are they so assured that they know exactly what happened at a place that they don't even control? They didn't have any inspectors there. They couldn't get access to the video footage and that kind of thing. And then the fact that they planned this before, that they actually tested it out, destroying the dam. They actually used HIMARS systems to attack the sluices already. They already kind of know how much damage they can do with different weapon systems against this dam, which makes you kind of go, they seem kind of guilty. So that's kind of where I'm landing on things with this. If you guys have some more information, please pop them down in the comments below. If you have some ideas of what that might mean, or that type of thing, pop it down in the comments down below. That's what it's there for. And I'm going to keep watching the information that comes out, and I'm listening to both sides. I want to follow truth. I want to hear truth. I want to speak truth. And so we just want to present the information to you. So maybe your idea of who did this has changed in the course of this video, or maybe it hasn't. But hopefully you understand a little more of some of the effects of what this means. And this is a major event when it comes to the war, because it's a loss of that bridge that is going to make life very difficult for the Russians on the west bank of the Dnieper River in Ukraine. All right, folks, if you found this video to be useful or helpful, you might want to check out another video from me right over here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.